What should the Mariners do about Bryce Miller? We'll answer that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, May 12th, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code Locked On MLB. That's LOCKEDON MLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And as always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So let's open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and see what Mariners questions you have for us. We are going to start here with Cameron, who wants to know, what do you do with Bryce Miller? Another bad start and more quotes that he's not feeling 100%. So, yeah, Miller after the game yesterday was not as descriptive as he's been when talking about what he's been dealing with in the past. But he did say around the third and fourth inning, he was dealing with something. So that's after, reporting some arm fatigue, back stiffness a couple starts ago. And this was by far the worst start statistically of any that he's had this year, where he gives up 7 over 5 innings pitched. Yikes. So Colby, with George Kirby still needing at least one more rehab start, still don't know exactly what the plan is with Logan Gilbert and how long away he is. What do you do about Bryce?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you start by skipping his next start, which you can do because you have the off day on Thursday. And then at that point, you can kind of reassess. Bryce, if you do skip the next start, then his slot in the rotation would come up again on the road against the White Sox. At that point, you might feel comfortable, giving him a shot, and you would give him 9 days to kind of, recoup physically and mentally and all of that. And give him an opportunity for a relative soft landing. One thing that could be in play here too is that you could skip his start, and it is possible that George Kirby could actually be ready to return and just slot into Bryce Miller's place in the rotation. But yeah, you're kind of in a weird spot with him. If you put him on the IL, then, obviously he's out a couple weeks and that's fine. If you demote him, then he couldn't be called up in time to make his next scheduled start because the Mariners only have one off day. So you'd still have to, go with a Blas Castano or Jonathan Diaz, whatever, which may not be that much worse than Bryce is doing right now. So I think at the very least, you have to skip the next start. And then if you want to kind of see him again after that, you can give him a softer landing in Chicago facing the White Sox. But I mean, I think right now anything has to be on the table, and that includes IL stints or just straight up demotion. And again, it's if you do it today, then you can send him down or put him on the IL or whatever, and you could have an extra bullpen arm for the next 9 days, which is pretty nice. You can call up Blas or whatever, and you can bring up a guy who give you some depth and some workload if you need it during that time, and then you can kind of make your decision from there. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. You have to see how George feels. When is George going to make his next start? And then, because it's possible that you could just go straight from putting Bryce on the IL or demoting him or whatever, calling up the extra relief arm for 9 days, and then, when Bryce's turn in the rotation comes up again, George is ready to go, and he takes Bryce's spot. So I think the only thing they really can't do is just continue to run him out there, because at the very least, you have a pitcher who is mentally hurt, or he was physically hurt, and now that has kind of messed with his mechanics, and now he's not feeling great mentally, and it's causing other things to happen. So Yeah, I think you have to strongly consider, moving Bryce down or putting him on the IL or whatever, because we've reached the stage where he's really not giving you a better chance to win, sadly, than even somebody like Jonathan Diaz or Blas Castano right now. So I think they have to make a move there, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I mean, if this is going to continue, like we've seen in 3 of Bryce's last 4 starts, where he's given up 4+ and not even being able to go more than 5, then how much worse off are you with just Sauron Lau or Jonathan Diaz? Because at that point, we're probably just talking about a loss is a loss, right? It doesn't really matter how many runs, Diaz gives up compared to Miller. Miller is putting you in some bad spots right now. Right? He's putting you at a severe disadvantage, not just in the game that he pitches either. With all the stuff that he's putting on the shoulders of the bullpen, it's impacting future games as well. So at the very least, could you maybe get Jonathan Diaz to go 6? Maybe he gives up 6 while doing it, but can he at least give you some length and not hurt your bullpen as much as Bryce is right now? Maybe, I don't know. I certainly understand why someone would say even, Bryce at 75% is someone that they would rather roll with than Lau or Diaz. But I'm at the point now where I see someone who clearly needs some sort of reset, whether that's physical, mental, or both. And at the very least, if you're going to lose these games in that spot in the rotation, you might as well try and do something productive. And if that's giving him a little bit of a reprieve, then do it. Right? So we'll see what they decide here. But it's still just such a weird situation. We've talked about this over and over again because of how cautious the Mariners have been with their pitchers. It doesn't seem like it's something that's so physically serious that he absolutely needs to go on the IL, or at least that's what they deemed. I don't think that the Mariners would suddenly be irresponsible with one of their pitchers, despite the situation that's at hand with Gilbert and Kirby both being on the IL. But clearly something needs to be done here. He needs some sort of break, and whether that's just skipping a start or skipping multiple by putting him on the IL or demoting him, they have to do something, I feel.
Yeah, and then they've gotten to a point now where at most Bryce's spot is going to come up one more time before before Kirby is ready to go, assuming Kirby doesn't suffer any setbacks. So yeah, this is a good time to do it again. Just skip the start, and then look, if I have to, start a game in Chicago and I have to use, Diaz and Blas Castano and whatever to get through 6, then so be it. I'll just do that. But yeah, Bryce right now, he's certainly not helping the team, and he's not really helping himself. He's not in a position to do that. So it's a bummer that we're in this situation, but we are, and you can't pretend that it's not happening.
All right, we will answer more of your questions here in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast tonight. After the Mariners-Yankees game, be sure to join Chris Crawford and Anders Hurst for the first ever Mariners postcast live right here on the Locked On Mariners YouTube channel. You can also listen to it shortly after it airs on all podcast platforms via the Locked On Mariners podcast feed. All right, let's get back into your questions here on Mailbag Monday. Kyle wants to know, Concern level with the starting pitching, primarily Wu, Miller, and Castillo.
Wu, pretty much zero.
Yeah.
Castillo, it's interesting. Luis is like getting bashed pretty severely on socials and whatnot. And I'm not telling you he's been great, but he's a sub 4 ERA pitcher right now. And the FIP and the XFIP say he's like a low 4 ERA pitcher. Yeah, I mean, he's been a number 5, unfortunately, and maybe a low end 4. But yeah, I think the thing with Castillo, though, is that if he threw more sliders, I actually think he'd be fine because the fastball is his primary, the four-seamer, and it's just not as good as it was last year. The velo still hasn't ticked up quite yet. The command of it's not quite there yet where it needs to be. Luis is a guy with a track record that you trust, and prior to his start on Friday, he was running a 3.6 ERA, and he was on pace to be a 2.5, 3-win pitcher again. So yeah, he had a bad start, and obviously he's not off to the same start he was in early April, but I'm not overly concerned about that. I still feel like the floor is really high with Luis, so I don't know, probably I don't know what scale we're using here, but probably like a 2 or a 3 on Castillo right now. Out of 10. And then Bryce, I'm at a 6 or a 7 right now because we're just not really sure what it is. I mean, if it was, just back spasms that he can't get through, well, you just put him on the IL and you deal with it. But it feels like it's more of a mental thing. And then there's also some kind of like an adjoining mystery ailment every single game that might be related to the mental problem he's having right now. So yeah, I think I am significantly more concerned about Bryce than I am even Castillo, and then Wu I'm not really concerned at all. Brian Wu is really good.
Yeah, Wu, I mean, it's just the game plan for opposing hitters is the game plan, and sometimes they're going to execute it, and most of the time they're not. Right, he's going to get ambushed, and that's going to work against hitters most of the time. Sometimes they'll actually connect. Right, so yeah, not really concerned on Wu. Even after the the rough start down in Sacramento, it's going to happen here and there for him. Castillo, yeah, I think really. I'm not necessarily concerned about Castillo. I'm just ready to accept that the floor and the ceiling has changed for him. And so expectations should be shifted from start to start with him. So I'm pretty low as well. I'm a bit higher than you. Like if we're doing a scale here on Miller, I'd probably say like out of 10, I'm more of like an 8 or a 9, just because we have no idea what's going on. And because of that, I have no idea how you fix it and if it can get better or when it can get better, all that. Right. So, but yeah, overall, yeah, not really concerned about Wu. Castillo pretty low. And then Miller is very, very concerning right now.
Yeah, if Castillo was just going 6 every time out instead of, the last couple times it's been mostly 5.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be all that noticeable.
Navy, the Matt Brash fan, wants to know, who do you think comes up to the big leagues first, Cole Young or Tyler Lleair?
Yeah, Young's on a bit of a heater right now.
Mm-hmm.
Lleair has been a popular guy for fans to be called up.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some concerning trends in Lleair's, in his profile right now. He is expanding the zone a lot. He's swinging, missing quite a bit. It's his second try at AAA, and the numbers aren't as good as they were last year. And he was playing with kind of an iffy wrist last year, and the numbers, well, they're still fine. They're not quite as good as they were last year. And I think a big part of that is the expanding of the zone that he's going through right now. I think the issue with both of these guys being called up anytime soon is that, where and how much playing time are they going to get? You're not going to call a guy up, a young guy like that, to be a platoon guy. And so at second base right now, you look at Young. Is he better than Rivas and Mastroboni and Dylan Moore? I don't know, maybe, but it's not a for sure thing. And Young right now, do you want him coming up and playing 2 or 3 times a week and then sitting right when he's starting to figure things out? I doubt it. So I don't think either one of them makes a ton of sense right now. I actually don't think there are a lot of, or even more than one or two like obvious roster moves for the Mariners to make. Their depth is stretched about as far as it can go already. So as far as which one do we see first? I mean, probably still Lleair, because they could DFA Solano, and if they don't think that Lleair is a long-term asset anyways, they might be okay with him being a 2-time a week player. So I'd say probably him. In terms of like who do I think is actually more equipped to handle major league pitching right now, I'd probably still say Cole Young, because he's still making really quality contact. He's not chasing, he's not striking out. He's doing a lot of the little things that the overall numbers don't quite mesh with right now. And he has found power, and he's elevating the baseball over the last week or so. So yeah, I would say Lleair's most likely to be called up like in the next week or two. But I think Young is actually, better shot to hit at the big league level. Guys who whiff and they expand the zone as much as Lleair's doing in AAA right now, who aren't even like dominating the PCL, that's a pretty big red flag for me.
Yeah, that usually doesn't diminish once you get to the big league level. So at the very least with Young, while he's still only rocking a 93 WRC plus down in Tacoma, he is hitting the ball hard with regularity. And he's only striking out 14.2% of the time, walking 11.2% of the time. He's controlling the zone more than Lleair is. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Lleair could really get called up at any time, depending on what they want to do. We do have a question here about Donovan Solano coming up a little later on, so we'll dive into that a bit more then when we get to that question. But yeah, it's possible that they might just call him up whenever. So I'll go with Lleair here, but Young's getting closer. And maybe there gets to a point, if Williamson's bat continues to go on the decline here, maybe they go, you know what, let's move Demo over to third and let's call up Cole Young and play some second. See what that looks like. All right. Taylor wants to know. Oh, there it is. Okay. I thought it was later on in the show, but here it is. Taylor wants to know, how do we get Solano off the roster if we want Lleair to keep cooking in Tacoma? Is it as simple as getting Polo/Moore some first base starts? Who takes Donnie's spot on the roster? If it's not Lleair or Colby, who would it be? Is there an actual option?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is if you're going to get Solano off the roster, it's not just like, okay, who plays first base against lefties? It's who takes his spot. And
yeah,
I think when you start looking at the options, we just talked about why Lleair not a no-brainer here in this situation. Cole Young, kind of the same thing. Like it doesn't really make sense to call him up and sit him. And I don't think the Mariners view Dylan Moore and Lleair Rivas as the problem. In fact, they would probably sit Young against lefties right now, because they'd want Lleair Rivas to be the second baseman, and Dylan Moore probably could play first in that situation. I think that makes some sense. He's done it before. And you have Tavares, who's a switch hitter, so you don't necessarily need Demo to play the outfield against every lefty. So that could be the role. And then maybe you're looking for a Demo call up, but that shouldn't be Young, because again, Young should be playing every day somewhere. And right now, AAA is the best spot. And, even somebody like Harry Ford doesn't make a ton of sense, because he's starting to hit finally, and he's actually seen his power numbers go up. He's been very good over the last, 10 days or so. And again, you have to be careful about not calling up guys just to, call them up because they're new and exciting. And so does does like a Samad Taylor give you more of a shot than Donovan Solano? Maybe. But again, the roster depth is stretched just about as thin as it can get already. And so, I think if you're looking to replace the Solano role, because Lleair Rivas is up and he's, performing right now, I think that would just be Dylan Moore. And then Rivas would kind of slide into the Dylan Moore role. Dylan's playing a lot against righties too, though, but against lefties, Dylan and Rivas can handle that. But then what do you do with that bench spot? I guess Taylor could give you more value there, but again, you're not looking at a ton of great options here. The Mariners really don't have a super obvious solution anywhere in the minors, and again, if you're not going to call up Lleair and you're not going to call up Ford and Young, if you're not going to call them up to play a ton, much more than Solano is right now, just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think the only way you would do it is you DFA Solano. Dylan Moore essentially becomes the platoon partner with Rowdy Tellez, and then you would call up like a Samad Taylor to give you some athleticism off the bench. I think is the way you would do it. I think that, and you're also not. I don't think you're super worried about getting Samad Taylor at bat. So I think you'd be fine if he, only got like one start a week. I think you'd be fine with that.
All right. We are going to get into a few more of your questions in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk or on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Mailbag Monday. Let's get back to your questions. Ryan wants to know, I want to hear your thoughts on the draft and who you think will go in the top 5. What are the pros of drafting a starter or a position player? Now, I don't want to put too much stock into, positions and position depth and your farm system and what have you. But if you draft a guy like Arquette, who could very well factor into the 2026 roster conversation at the big league level for you, and he may very well play up the middle or at the very least play some third base for you. Maybe at that point you feel a little more comfortable trading Cole Young or Colt Emerson or someone like that at the deadline. Yeah. Now, as far as Emerson goes, I don't think there's going to be a player out there that should realistically command Colt Emerson. Like Kyle Tucker's not going to get traded. Vladdy just signed his extension, so I don't really force, unless Ronald Acuna Jr. suddenly hits the market. The Braves are actually willing to move on from him. I don't think there's going to be someone out there that you would even consider trading Colt Emerson for. But again, maybe the presence of Arquette in your farm system allows you to feel more comfortable in trading one of those guys, right?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. Also, if you select Arnold or Doyle, they're probably going to be in the big leagues next year at some point as well. And at that point, you might feel comfortable this winter trading a Logan Gilbert or a George Kirby or maybe even a Miller or Wu. And you feel like, we have that replacement right here. And then you probably have Senja probably about a year behind. So yeah, there are some, big league 2026 factors being played in here, because you look at the top of this draft, the college guys who are being, listed at near the top of the draft, the Arquettes, the Doyles, the Arnolds, they're all on an accelerated path. Like I'd be surprised if they weren't all in the big leagues by, assuming health, by, a calendar year. After they're drafted, I would think they'd all be in the big leagues by then. So yeah, and that's something Keith Law did mention as well, that like, hey, the Mariners are kind of like in a win now mode type of thing. So they might be valuing the college player who can help them sooner more than the high upside shot that they could take on the prep arm. So it's certainly possible, but the Mariners do kind of have a gap in the pitching. We're seeing it right now. The wave of starters to come up after the big 4 that they developed. So I think there's merit to both sides, and both of them either taking if you're going to go college and you take one of these guys that we think will be there, then I think either way that could impact how you approach the trade of, either a prospect in your system or potentially a major league rotation arm this winter. So there are some avenues that open up depending on who you select at number 3.
Yeah, and so it's going to impact the trade deadline discourse, at least to a certain degree, no matter who you take. Because at number 3, you might be adding a new number 1 prospect, someone that's probably going to slot in the top 15 to top 30 most prospect rankings across the circuit. And then you're probably adding another guy at pick 35 who's going to be somewhere in the 5 to 8-ish range in your prospect rankings, your team prospect rankings as well. And we're talking about a farm system that has 9 guys currently in Pipeline's top 100. This is one of the best farm systems in the entire game. How many good prospects do you need? Right. So it should make you more willing to not necessarily get reckless. That's probably the wrong word to use here with your prospects at the deadline, but it should allow you to feel more comfortable in getting aggressive at the deadline with your prospects, because you have so many good prospects at that point, right? And a lot of these guys, as we know, they're not going to hit no matter how well you develop. All right, last question of the day from Mike. Between Julio and Cal, who do you think could win the AL MVP first? Julio, with a bullet. Julio. Yeah. As good as Cal is, Cal's probably going to max out at like a 6 or 7 win season as his best year. And as long as Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. are present in the American League, you're going to need to put together a 9-10 win season to win MVP. Julio is far more capable of doing that. Not saying he will, but he's far more capable of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also just kind of the gravitas and the hype that you can generate. And, as great as Cal is, half the league can't even say his last name right. So
Cal Raleigh,
or Raleigh.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like Cal is still, I think, underrated and underappreciated across baseball, even though most people have come around to the idea that like he's the best catcher in baseball. But there is kind of a limit there. There's not a lot of catchers win the MVP award. Not as many of them put up as many good offensive numbers as Cal does, which does give him a chance. But Cal to me feels like a guy who's just going to, finish in the top 10 a couple times, but never really get that close. Julio, I could absolutely see winning it because Julio can do the flashy thing, like win a Gold Glove and go 40-40. Whereas, exactly. Cal is probably going to have to hit 40 home runs to even be in the top 10 discussion at the end of the year. And he's a catcher, and that's a lot of wear and tear. So to expect him to hit 40 and he's going to have to hit for a decent average too. They're not going to give the MVP award to a guy hitting 220, unfortunately, even if they deserve it. So,
and I mean, the last 3 catchers to win MVP in their respective leagues, Buster Posey in 2012, Joe Mauer in 2009, and Pudge Rodriguez in 99. Like it doesn't really happen. All right. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.